Welcome students, there will be no foolish wand waving or silly incantations in this class. As such, I don't expect many of you to appreciate the subtle science and exact art that is sewing. However, for those select few who possess the will and determination, I can teach you how to cut out a Hogwarts house robe, sew it together, and even add contrasting facings inside the sleeves. Let's begin. The pattern I'm using is the Simplicity 8723, which I chose because it's widely available. First, grab your pattern envelope and let's quickly determine what is needed. Locate the picture of the robe on the envelope. It says B right next to it, so everything we care about on the envelope and inside the envelope will have to be marked with a B. Now, the matter of size. You can find the measurements for children and teens and adults right here. If you have a measuring tape, feel free to use it. If not, pick the size you usually go with. You can find them marked underneath right here. Now find the box where it says B robe. Let's determine how much of the main black fabric is needed. These two numbers represent the different widths of the fabric you will find at the stores. So let's say you are a teen/adult, size small, and the fabric you find is 45 inches wide. Go up to the S in the adult size section and slide back down. You'll find that you have to get 4.5 yards of fabric. Now move down to where it says contrasting fabric. That's maroon for Gryffindor, yellow for Hufflepuff, etc. You'll see that an adult size small needs 1/5/8 yards. In case you'd also like to add contrasting facings inside your sleeves, I suggest adding another 1/4 to 1/2 yard to the contrasting fabric. That addition is completely optional. Now moving another line down, here you can see that you'll also need 1/3/4 yards of fusible interfacing. With me so far? Now that we have our fabrics figured out, we still need some notions. So let's move up to the second box. Again, locate B. Here you will find that you need your house patch, 3/4 yards of 1/8 inch elastic cording, and 2 1-inch shank buttons. Feel free to get creative here. If that's not the closure you want for your robe, you can go with something else. I have chosen to go with 2 black frog closures, which remind me of the golden snitch. I'll leave a link down below where you can get them. For the thread, get colors that match your fabrics. If you opt for a blend or synthetic fabric, go with all-purpose polyester thread. If you choose cotton, I also suggest choosing cotton thread. Finally, the very top box suggests what type of fabrics to use. Now, as far as the sewing tools, you will need scissors, a needle, a marking tool, a ruler, pins, an iron, and a sewing machine. But of course you could sew it by hand if you don't have a sewing machine. Now that you have all your tools together, let's open up that envelope. Besides holding the pattern, you'll also find sewing instructions, which I'm going to walk you through as we sew, because I know you're eager to get started. So first off, find all the pattern pieces that have a B on them, which there are 7 of. If you're planning on making more than one robe and in a different size, I suggest you copy your pattern size onto a new piece of paper. You can do so by taping together a bunch of plain papers, use packaging paper, or anything else you have available. As you can see, the lines for different sizes crisscross, so there's a bit more to it than just making it larger from all sides. Once you have all your pattern pieces, let's cut them out of the fabric. Let's start with the main black fabric. First, single fold it in half widthwise. Now place the pattern pieces numbered 6, 7, 8, 9, and 12 on the fabric, trying to match what you see in the instructions. If for some reason you cannot fit your pieces the way the instructions say, you simply need to get creative. Either make them fit, or you might need to get some extra fabric. But make sure all the grain lines run in the same direction, otherwise your garment might sit funny. Once you have achieved your perfect layout, pin the pattern pieces onto the fabric or place some heavy items like books on top. Grab your marking tool and let's draw the pattern onto the fabric. Pay attention to all the little markings on the pattern and make sure to copy those onto the fabric. For the little circles, you can use your marking tool or contrasting thread. The little triangles are marked as you cut, either by snipping into the fabric just a couple of millimeters or cutting a triangle shape away from the pattern. Let's move on to the contrasting fabric. Single fold the fabric lengthwise. Take pieces number 9, 10, and 11 and place them on the fabric like so. Pin, mark, and cut just like you did with the main fabric. That finished, go get your interfacing and pieces number 10 and 11. Single fold it lengthwise and cut. Now the optional addition for contrasting sleeves. Find your sleeve pattern and your contrasting fabric. Lay only half of the pattern onto the fabric and cut out 2 pieces. At this point, you should have all your pieces cut out. Now we sew. Take your front and back robe pieces and stay stitch the neckline to prevent it from stretching as we work on the robe. Just use a straight running stitch. This is what you should end up with. Now grab your pockets and your front and back robe panels. Pin the pockets matching the marked circles onto the back and front pieces so that the right sides are facing and the raw edges are even. Here's where it comes handy if you mark the wrong side of the fabric, especially because our fabrics look the same on both sides. Now sew the pocket pieces onto the panels with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. When that's done, lay the panel flat, fold the pocket pieces away from the fabric and press. Now grab your 2 back panels, place them right sides together and pin along the center back, then sew with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Now get your front panels and attach them to the sewn together back panel at the shoulders. Pin and sew again with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Moving on to the side seams. Right sides facing, match up the panel's sides and pockets. Make sure your robe still has the pocket matching circles marked on them. Those markings show you where you have to pause your sewing, pivot the garment, and continue sewing around the pocket until you get to the other circle where you have to pivot again and continue sewing down the side seam. This might look slightly daunting, but trust that you know what you're doing. When that's done, we need to cut into the seams around the pocket to ease some tension and press them open. Make sure you don't cut into the thread. When the seam allowances are free to move around, press them flat and then press the pocket towards the front panel. This is what it should look like from the right side. Next are sleeves and the optional contrasting facings, which I guarantee are going to look really cool. First, take all your sleeve panels and sew them together at the side seams. Now, if you are not adding facings, just turn the lower raw edge back twice and stitch. Others, grab your contrasting fabric wrong side out and slide it over the black sleeve, which is right side out. Match the seams and the raw edges, pin and sew the 2 pieces together at the bottom edge with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Then cut away some excess seam allowance and turn the contrasting fabric inside the black sleeve. Press the edge. Now to finish the upper edge of the facing, turn the whole sleeve inside out. Fold the edge of the contrasting fabric under around 5 millimeters. Press and with using black thread and very tiny stitches, attach it onto the black fabric like so. Basically, slide the needle through the contrasting fabric for 1 inch and then grab just a few threads of the black fabric so nothing would show on the right side. Now that the sleeves are looking good, let's attach them on the robe. Turn the sleeves right side out and the armhole wrong side out. Attach them right sides facing, matching the markings and the seams. This is perhaps the toughest part if you're a complete beginner, so just take your time and don't be shy with pins. If you feel like pins are not secure enough, you can also baste the armhole before you sew. Now take it to your machine and stitch. When that's done, stitch one more time 3 millimeters from the first seam. Finally, trim the seam allowance and press. Moving on to the hood. Stitch each together from the top and back, right sides facing. Clip the corners and now attach the contrasting hood inside the black one, right sides facing. Match the seams and the raw edges and stitch the front edge together. Turn the hood so that the contrasting fabric is on the inside. Press the edges and then baste the bottom edge together. Now grab your robe and clip all around the neck hole to create some ease. Get your hood and pin it onto the neck edge, right sides facing. Match the center seams and the little dots with shoulder seams. Baste. Now take your front facing and apply inner facing. Do the same with the back facing. Then sew them together at shoulder seams so it becomes one continuous piece. Now you can finish the unnotched edge of it by either turning down the edge and stitching, using a zigzag stitch or a serger. You can also use pinking shears. The goal is to make it look nice and clean. With right sides together, attach the facing onto the robe. Match center seams and shoulder seams and sew along the edge all around. To reduce bulk, trim corners and seams, and again, clip the curves around the neck hole. Now fold the facing away from the fabric, but don't turn it under yet. Let's press. Make sure the seam allowance underneath folds towards the facing and not towards the black fabric. That's because now we have to understitch the facing onto the seam allowance. So just stitch close to the edge. When that's done, turn the facing inside and you should be able to feel how easily it turns. Press. The next step in your instructions is to tack the facings onto the seam allowances, but let's leave that for a little later. So right now, let's move on to finishing the hem. Turn the lower part of your facing out again. Match the raw edges and pin. Now measure 3.2 centimeters from the bottom edge and mark it. That'll be your sewing line. Go ahead and do that. Next, trim away only the facing part and then measure 1.5 centimeters from the inner edge of the facing. Mark it. That's where you will trim the black fabric to. When that's done, turn the facing inside, press and finish the hem by turning the raw edge down 6 millimeters, pressing and pinning along the way, and then stitch it all together along the bottom edge. Only 4 more finishing touches. I would say the first one is optional. Feel free to top stitch all around the front edge and the hood. That'll further help to keep the facings in place and also looks good. But I personally am still not happy how the facings sit, and that's why I wanted to leave the tacking for later, which is now. The instructions say to only tack the facings from shoulder seams and center back seam, which you shall indeed follow, but I also suggest to tack them in 3 to 4 spots along the front edge on each side. A couple of tiny stitches will do. And finally, the front closure and the house patch. If you're opting for the front closure that is suggested on the pattern, take your 2 buttons and sew them onto the robe where the little markings are. Then take your elastic band, fold it, sew it together, attach it under one of the buttons, and there you go. Excellent! You have made your own Hogwarts house robe. Congratulations! Well done, class. Who would like to demonstrate?
Wingardium Leviosa.
You there, what did I say about wands? Get up and show the class what you made.
Yes, sorry, of course.
Twirl. I thought you were making a size small.
I did.
That's it.
Yes.
The one you're wearing. That is small. I don't know what's happening in the world anymore. Class dismissed.
She can disapparate, and this is what she teaches me?